Alrighty, happy Monday, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at. I'm Nadia. I am joined by my co-host Irene. We have a fantastic program happening today. We have four wonderful guest speakers. So I'm very excited to kick things off. We won't have time for our extensive national updates today. But please continue to introduce yourself and drop any announcements that you have in the chat. I will make space for one national update from Dr. Jyoti Robertson, but everybody else, please drop any announcements that you have in the chat. So Jyoti, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Nadia. This is really quick. I'm Jyoti Robertson, and I host meditations for anyone in the animal well-being space or anyone outside of it. And we haven't done any this year, but we are going to start tomorrow morning. It's at 6:30 in the morning. It's just 20 minutes and anyone can join. And I'm going to drop everything into the chat about it. No registration needed this year. So it's just a Zoom link and we'll have different meditations throughout the year. Plus on the 15th of every month, I'll be sharing a recording that anyone can download or listen to also. So it's something to support your teams for, for anyone on your teams and any of your family or friends also. Thank you. Thank you, Nadia.
Yes, thank you, Jyoti. And you can always save the meditations, like Dr. Robertson said, and listen to them later. They do come in handy. So with that, please continue to drop any national updates that you have in the chat. And I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Irene.
Thanks, Nadia. And before we get to our wonderful panelists today, we did want to ask a question of the day. We want to know any money saving tips for pet supplies today. Can you please share them? You can drop them in the chat. I will share. Recently, I discovered some that they sell dog chews and snacks at our local home goods store, and I'm not endorsing them. I'm not being paid for this advertisement, but I found that to be a super helpful resource. Even if they're not on clearance, there's a big discount as compared to the brand's online store, but just be sure to check the Best By or expiration dates. So other folks, please let us know if you have some money saving tips for those pet supplies.
Right now?
Oh, yeah. If you have some, Kim,
really quick. Instead of cat litter, pine pellets. They're available at Tractor Supply Company. You can get a 40-pound bag for $6.50. And in my house, one bag lasts me about a week and a half, which is a far cry from what I was spending on litter before. And they're really, really good. They're biodegradable and they're healthy for the cats.
Thank you, Kim. That was such a good sell. I know some organizations can get shelter discounts, so not just for you to purchase for your shelter pets, but to extend those discounts to your employees. I know in my previous organization, Hills did that for their pet food. And so as an employee of the organization, I was able to take advantage of that discount too. So something to explore if you're already buying in bulk. Anybody else wants to unmute and share or maybe drop in the chat?
I'm seeing some really good ones. There's definitely like the local pet pantries and community food pet drives, and good RX coupons for meds, good prescription. Old jeans cut into strips and braided to make dog chews and toys. That's awesome. That's great. Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, these are really great. We can always reference them later on. We share these on Maddie's Pet Forum, but thank you all for sharing some of your great money saving tips. Wanted to introduce you all. Today's panel discussion is called We Belong Together, Keeping Pets and Their People Together Throughout Homelessness. So today you'll be hearing from Angella Fawn, Wanda Miller, Kim Olson, and Dawn Floyd. Angie, Wanda, Kim, and Dawn.
I'm just here on audio. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry, but is that Is that Angie?
No, this is Dawn Floyd. I could not
Oh.
get my link to work, so I'm only on audio.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting us know, Dawn. But if you all could just tell us a little bit about yourselves and your lived experiences, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm been elected to go first. My name is Wanda Miller, and I am a person with lived experience of homelessness with companion animals. And my story, in a nutshell, because it's very traumatic for me to tell, but I had to surrender my 6 dogs back in 2012 when it was an illegal eviction, it was retaliatory. And I saw firsthand and experienced firsthand the devastation of that. I am a trauma impacted person. I'm diagnosed with PTSD. I have, since 2016, I have studied trauma-informed care. I am currently volunteering with an organization called the Corporation for Supported Housing, which I have now become chair of their People with Lived Experience working group. So that's a little bit about me. And I guess just adding that I share my home, or the cats share their home with me, maybe. I have emotional support animals, and I also take care of a colony of community cats. So I'll hand it over to Kim.
Thank you, Wanda. My name is Kim Olson. I am a person of lived experience of homelessness with animals. I do not have any affiliations with any organizations or anything. I am basically just somebody who is very, very much concerned about the situation with animal welfare and the lack of integrated case management with people, and how that affects people's ability to care for their animals and stay connected with their animals in situations that are obviously, beyond their control. I'm not sure what else to say. I mean, I actually have my animals. I have 19 cats, and I'm lucky currently to have a decent sized home to take care of them and love them, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for being here and for helping out with all the different causes that Wanda has so graciously allowed me to take part in with her. So thank you guys very much.
Hi, I'm Dawn Floyd, and I'll introduce myself. I'm from the southern area of the United States, well renowned for a lot of lack of in many ways. And I too have experienced homelessness both here and in Illinois. I don't have a lot of input as far as what has worked. Not a lot has worked, but I can tell you where the failures lie and what situation I'm in now.
Thank you, Dawn. And then so Angie.
Angie is having a little bit of difficulty getting on. She just texted me, so hopefully she'll be able to connect in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you so much for that update, Wanda. And thank you for being here and sharing more about yourselves. And I know this is, making yourselves somewhat vulnerable, and so or very vulnerable. So we just really appreciate all that you are willing to share. We wanted to ask what worked, what didn't, and what could have been done better as you were all going through your experiences, your lived experiences with your pets.
Do you want me to go through all the questions, Irene, or do you want each person to answer the individual question?
I whatever is most natural. I think that if you want to talk through your story, I think we don't really want to pigeonhole you or anything or structure it in that way. So if you want to just, yeah, that would
All
be
right.
great. Thank you.
Okay, I will just go through the 3 questions then. So what worked? I racked my brain over this one. I try to be, after years and years of therapy, I try to be the person that sees both sides of the coin. I don't try to see things black and white. I try to see the nuanced gray. But unfortunately, I really could not see anything that worked or remember anything or pinpoint anything that worked when I was going through the eviction and losing my animals. Um, I don't know now. I think there is becoming, I guess, just to keep this on a positive note, there are a lot of organizations now that are recognizing that there is a need for policy change, for structure change, for organizational change. There's a lot more um, trainings going on with diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's trainings with trauma-informed care. Organizations are recognizing that they are working with vulnerable populations. And when they work with vulnerable populations, they do need to change their policies a bit, and they sometimes need to adapt and structure things differently. So I would say that's something that's working overall at this moment. But when I was going through it, there was really nothing. There was really no help out there for me. What didn't work? What didn't work was, as a person with a mental health issue, I was penalized for that. That was one big thing that I would like to point out. We didn't have trauma-informed care, wasn't really talked about back then. There really wasn't an understanding. It was a situation where if you can't take care of your animals, you surrender them because you're a bad person if you can't take care of your animals. That that mindset is still out there today, but I think it's changing. And I know for myself, one of the things that was most devastating for me, and I did want to let everyone know too that Kim, myself, and Angie, we took part in the California for All call, for the California for All Animals call back in November. And if you go on their page and look up our presentation, you can hear all of our backstories in depth. But for me, the issue of when I was being evicted, and I was evicted because I had a slumlord, basically. He was doing illegal things. I called him out for it. He retaliated. End result, I was evicted because I was a troublemaker. When I was trying to find a place, I had 6 dogs. I had multiple small animals. When I was trying to find a place for my dogs, no one would take them. No one would take them temporarily. There was no fostering. There was nothing. I had no choice but to surrender them. And I did surrender. I ended up surrendering them. And the small animals, unfortunately, because the eviction was on again, off again, on again, off again. Finally, I had to get out. When I left, I let a neighbor know my animals are here. I can't get back in. They're going to lock up the trailer. I called our local SPCA. I told them the situation. I was told over and over again, we can't help you. We can't transport. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I did everything that I felt I could do at that time. And believe me, it took years of therapy to be able to come to that conclusion that, yes, I did do everything that I could do at that moment. But despite all of that, I was still fined over $500 for abandonment and neglect of the small animals. I was basically told by the adoption coordinator at the shelter or the rescue where I surrendered my dogs that I was a bad person for surrendering my old dog who was in bad health, and he had to be, this is why I don't like to tell my story because it's really traumatic. He had to be euthanized. I had had that dog since he was 1 year old. He was a rescue, and he had to be euthanized because he was in such a bad shape. And I wasn't able to go see him because at that point, I was suicidal. I was depressed. I was mentally ill. I was also in a shelter. I had no car. I had nothing at that point. And I was being told by this person, this animal welfare person, that you are that I'm basically, it would, and her words were, it would be nice if his person was here at the end for him. And I nicely told her, I said, this is not my choice. It's not my choice. So those are some of the things that didn't work. And I think just that amount of trauma you carry with you for the rest of your life. I still struggle working with my therapist on this particular issue. And I thought that I would never own another animal because I felt I was such a bad person. And then in 2020, that changed when I started doing TNR with a colony of cats behind our building. And one of them decided that, you know what, you need a pet. You need to understand you're not a bad person. You need to understand that, to me, it's a case of who rescued who. My rogue definitely rescued me. So talking about the stray cats, I mean, that will lead into the what could be done better. There's several things that I have here, and I'm going to try to be really brief and mindful of time. One of the big things I see is I would love to see across the board trauma-informed care training. And I would love to see it in a way that it is that the representatives of these of animal welfare organizations want to do it. It's not mandatory, because we know when we force people to try to accept different like trauma-informed care or diversity, equity, inclusion, when we force people into these trainings, a lot of times people get resistant to it. I would like people to be open-minded and to really want to try to embrace trauma-informed care, because I think it could be a real game changer in animal welfare. I also think we need to have more integrated case management. And what I mean by that is animal welfare organizations and human services organizations working together. We have a movement of co-sheltering through My Dog Is My Home. Let's extend that to actually, and I think that kind of falls in the line with veterinary social work as well, but let's do that dual training. Let's have those conversations between animal welfare folks and human services folks, and let them learn from each other so that they can better serve their clients who have companion animals. Policy is a big one. Policy should be something that is talked about with your respective communities, particularly if you're dealing with communities that have a lot of vulnerable communities in their vulnerable people, poor, marginalized, vulnerable individuals. Talk to them, have focus groups, have advisory committees. Policy changes, as far as I'm concerned, policy changes should always be done with input from people with lived experience, so that they understand, so that you as animal welfare organizations understand how those policies may impact people. And I'll give a brief example. Our local SPCA decided to go no kill about, I think in about 2019 or 2020, they were going through the process. They did it because they wanted more funding. Okay, that's great. That's understandable. However, they did not do this. They did not go and talk to the communities. So now we have an issue with, there are so many, and I did see somebody in the chat that's doing TNR. So, yay to you in your organization. We have, one of the biggest populations that get euthanized are stray cats. So they decided to put in policy that the stray cats would now be considered wildlife, so they're not going to take them in. So, any cat, no matter how friendly, is considered feral, considered wildlife. They won't take the animal in. That means more cats on the street, more cats breeding, more cats, just going in, getting into communities that are poor communities that really don't have the resources to handle it. And then you have people like myself. I'm on disability. Dawn's going to talk a little bit about this. We're doing all this on our own time and dime, trying to take care of these cats. I have a cat right now in a crate that if I had left him out there, he would have died. He has paws, and he had injured paws. He had infection. He's just a mess. He's now at the point where he's like, every time I let him out, he runs to the door. He's ready to get neutered. He's ready to get adopted out. I had to actually, to get this cat help, I had to go through an underground, and I'm going to try to mind my words here because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but basically I discovered there's a whole underground network of people that are helping with vet care that, they have the knowledge to do it, but they don't have the licensing to do it. And I think that needs to change too. We need to have more with, vet techs can do so much. And maybe, if vet techs were allowed to do, like, I think they're nurse practitioners or something, if we could put them in line with a nurse practitioner on the human medical side, that would be a big help. And then, just like more access to vet care, understanding more access to vet care. And when we're looking at abuse cases, I don't like to use this word, but it's the only word I really know, like decriminalize a lot of abuse cases. Because yes, we do have individuals that are psychopaths. They'll go out, they'll maliciously harm an animal, but many people are in the situation like I was. I was in a situation where I didn't deserve getting that on my record. I didn't deserve getting cited and having to pay $500 because I neglected and abandoned my animals. I didn't do that. I didn't neglect them. I didn't abandon them. I was mentally ill. And just the stigma of mental illness, there's so many moving parts here that need to be addressed and changed. But just looking at abuse cases, is it really abuse? Let's talk about that. And if someone does have something on their record, is there a way that we can go back, like the animal welfare organization can go back and do a look back at that and talk to the person and go, what happened? Again, trauma-informed care. What happened that you had to abandon your animal or you had to do this? And 9 times out of 10, the person's probably going to say that they didn't feel like they had any other option. Just like individuals that drop cats off at my colony. I think a lot of them are not bad people. I think they're people that they have no other option. They go to the SPCA, the SB says, we won't take them. They go to rescues are full. They don't know what to do. They don't want to put the animal up on Craigslist. They don't know what other resources are out there. So what they want to do is, they look at, it's a colony, someone's caring for these cats, let's put it there. And just shout out to Vincent. I have seen you do several presentations. I love your message. I love what you do. And part of this presentation is because of you and because of things that I have heard you talk about. So thank you so much. And I'm going to end this with individuals that are out there managing cat colonies, individuals experiencing homelessness, and they're trying to keep their pets with them. They should be getting medals. They should be getting pats on the back for trying to do the right thing. But instead, many times they get quote unquote handcuffs. And at that, I will turn it over to Kim. I don't know. I hope I didn't go over. I'm sorry, Kim, if I did.
Thank you, Wanda. And I just got reminded why I try to go before Wanda. Wanda is a wonderful speaker, and thank you so much. But she always makes me so emotional with her story, and it's hard to follow this woman. It really is. She's definitely a force in this whole field. But thank you, Wanda. So I am not as eloquent as Wanda. I do not have a prepared speech like Wanda. I tend to just speak right from the heart and basically just what I know. So as far as the 3 questions are concerned, I'm unfortunately with Wanda. My story is a little different. I've never had to actually deal with animal welfare, thankfully. So I don't really have an answer to what has worked. My experience here, we're going to jump to question 2, what didn't work. I was homeless for a long time, and I had 16 cats. And just to give a little clarification to that, I did not have 16 cats and I was being irresponsible and being homeless. No, I actually lived in a very large house. I was taking care of my mother and my children. And through an unfortunate series of events that are family related, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, things just happen. I ended up having to leave for my own safety and had 16 cats that I had to take care of. And I wasn't willing to part with any of them because my cats saved my life. I too came from a history of addiction, which I have been free of for 8 years now. But at one point, my cats were my reason for getting up every morning. And they are literally the reason why I am walking, talking, breathing today. So getting rid of them was not an option. However, animal welfare doesn't see things that way. They're very black and white when it comes to that stuff. And thank you very much for that. I just saw the thing in the chat. So my experience was I was now hiding in a hotel room. I had a job, just so we all are clear. I was, again, not irresponsible. I could afford my cats. I had a job. I was making almost $50,000 a year. So I could afford the hotel room. I could afford the cats. It just wasn't ideal. And I had to hide. And I felt like I was a criminal. Just so that we were clear, I literally felt the same at that point as I did back when I was still actively using and hiding, because I knew if anybody found out about my situation, I would be in trouble and I would lose everything. Basically the same way I did when I was using and I was a drug addict. That, I think, is the part that doesn't work. Putting people in fear by making policies that are completely without any consideration to the human animal bond. Because, like I said, my animals are the reason why I'm a living, breathing human. So, yeah, my situation was not one where I just started hoarding animals. No, I could fully take care of my animals. They were very well cared for. They still are. But when you live in a world where people make policies based on what they feel is best for these animals. Listen, my animals are better cared for than most people's children are. I can promise you that. And still, though, if somebody would have walked in and found my animals, I would have lost my animals. They would have been taken from me and I would have been punished and probably slapped with, a neglect or an abuse, label on me. So that's the part that doesn't work, is putting people in fear, because that really does create situations where people feel like they have to do things in hiding. And then you end up with things like Wanda was talking about, the underground systems. And maybe the fact that Wanda has to feel like she has to be careful about what she says right here, right now about that is probably an indication of what's wrong. Because here are people trying to do what's best for the animals and help them and give them life and give them care and give them all these things. But yet we have to sit here and be very careful about how we talk about it, because it might be shut down and that might be taken away from everybody. And that's what's wrong, is forcing people to hide. That's how you end up with hoarding situations. That's how you end up with people that are trying their best, but they get overwhelmed because there's nothing out there to help them. And then you have people that are in situations like me. I was in a situation where I was very suicidal and my cats are what kept me alive. And so to take them from me just because my situation changes, that doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem right. So what can change? What can be done better? Integrated case management. I agree with Wanda 100%. And you're talking to somebody who is not, this is all new to me. I didn't even know what integrated case management was until I met Wanda. And I am the biggest fan of that idea. Getting animal welfare and human services to work hand in hand to preserve the human animal bond and to prevent, I guess, people from doing what they think is best for the animal with no consideration to what that might do to the person, is probably the best thing we can do going forward, is start actually recognizing that and taking care of that and nurturing that. So, like I said, I'm not affiliated with anything. I'm not part of any organization. I'm just a person that does my best. I have my animals. My cats are my babies. They are, like I said, better taken care of than most people's kids are. And even me, and I see somebody saying it doesn't do a lot of animal persons watch this. And that's I didn't read the whole question because I'm just seeing little pop-ups, but that brings me to a point. Even in my situation, I have a fairly large, decent sized house and I take care of my animals, but still live in fear of somebody turning me in for having, say, too many animals in a certain area. Animal welfare could walk into my house anytime they wanted to, and they could tell me that I'm a hoarder, even though I'm not, because the legal definition of a hoarder is having more animals than you can reasonably care for. And that could be 2, or it could be 20, or it could be 100. It doesn't matter the number, it matters what you can care for. I can care for my animals, but because of policies or regulations, somebody could walk in and take all my animals from me right now. And I have to live in that fear, which is not fair. It's not fair at all. So I really think that that's kind of the point I would like to, or the message I'd like to leave everybody with, is just things need to be changed as far as everybody wants everything to be done, all these animals be cared for, somebody needs to do something, but when we do, we're punished for it. So something just for everybody to take a look at and to think about. And in my experience, I haven't seen a lot that does work, but I see a lot that can be changed. And yeah, so hopefully, hopefully this doesn't fall on deaf ears. I'm guessing it's not, so we wouldn't be here if it was. So thank you guys so much for all your time and your consideration and all this, and for listening to our experiences and our stories. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over because I'm going to start coughing here in a second now. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Dawn, are you able to share? I know you can't share your screen.
I can't share my screen, but I can definitely, and I do have something prepared. So I'm ready if you are.
Yes, please go for it.
Sure. Well, as I said, I live in Northeast Arkansas, and I've been caring for community cats for like 8 years now. And I currently, like Kim, have 19 cats in my home and an outdoor colony of about the same number. But I haven't always lived here. I came here due to being homeless, and I spent most of my life in northern Illinois. I was married at like 19, and I lived through 20 years of domestic violence, which left me scarred with complex PTSD. At the period of my first period of homelessness, I actually experienced the loss of my 2 German Shepherd dogs that I had had for 10 years. And like Wanda, they were sent over the bridge, which was always really hard because I had no way to help them. I couldn't help myself. I was living in an abandoned garage in fear of my life because I was afraid my ex would find me, and he still had our child in his home. But at the end of that divorce, I relocated. I was able to get some help from family and come to Arkansas. And eventually my parents asked me to move in and help them because they were getting elderly and they needed some help with their care. Unfortunately, that situation became toxic because my mother had liver failure and her medications were continuing to build up in her blood system because your liver filters out your meds, and it wasn't functioning properly, so she wasn't thinking properly. And I was suddenly asked to leave her property because she thought I had said things that I had not said. And that began my second period of homelessness. And the shelter, the homeless shelter in our area couldn't take us in because my husband is.
I remember sitting back here a couple years ago and we were looking up.
Hi, sorry, just jumping in. If y'all are unmuted, can you please mute your microphones? Thank you. Go ahead, Dawn.
Alrighty. Anyway, yeah. So I was asked to leave there, and the homeless shelter here in Arkansas wouldn't take my family in because we at that time didn't have the money to see a vet for 4 animals to be vaccinated. So the homeless shelter couldn't help us, and I was sent away with nothing but a blanket. And I had 2 dogs, 2 cats, and my 9-year-old child with me. And my husband and I each had a van, which we then lived out of for 2 weeks until we were able to get this place I live in right now. When we rented this place, we were offered a rent to own, which was fabulous and very helpful. But within 24 hours, we realized there was a sizable cat colony on the property, and that's where my journey began. The struggle here in Arkansas, it's incredibly hard. The poverty is just rampant. The state ranks very poorly in nearly every single metric. Pet ownership is just not taken as seriously as it should be, and a lot of animals, cats, dogs, even potbelly pigs, are dumped and abandoned in horrific circumstances. In my town, we have a 5-pet ordinance here, and obviously I'm not in compliance with that ordinance. And if they choose to begin to fine me, I'm going to again face homelessness, right? And it would be devastating. I would lose most or all of these rescues, and several are still with me because of behavioral or health issues of theirs, and I couldn't rehome them. It wouldn't have been right. It wouldn't have been fair to the adopter or the animal, which is unfortunate. But I have found homes and helped about 60 cats over the past 6 years. We pay out of pocket, just like Wanda said. We pay out of pocket. We pay for all the desexing. We go through, 40 pounds of dry food a week and probably 200 pounds of pine litter a week. We've poured our hearts and souls into this effort to rescue these animals with little or no help at all. But we stand to lose all of it at the whim of the city if they choose to. They could point out the fact that the colony continues to grow because I feed them, which is also against local ordinance. Yeah, we're not supposed to feed them. We also have very limited low-cost desexing clinics. So we can't cut the population down, but we're not allowed to feed them either. So that doesn't work. Anyway, at the start of this journey here, my local shelter, the nationwide shelter, they were really helpful. They had low-cost desexing for me. They did placements for me of the friendlies. But unfortunately, over time, changes in that organization led to a breakdown of our relationship, and I can't. That option is gone now. So I've made a lot of attempts to ask other area rescues, of which there's only a handful, that I have got very little help. A couple months ago, I decided to go out in person and invite every professional and every rescuer that I knew of to a roundtable discussion. And I wanted to address our community cats and stray and abandoned pet population, and also see if there was any way that we could help with pets of homeless people as well. And when I did that, I asked our local library for a room, which I had to pay to reserve. And but I was fine with that because I had confirmation, right, from the vets and from rescuers. Well, guess what? No one showed up. I sat 2 hours by myself. It's a sense of apathy, even among the professionals. Obviously, there's a huge need for change. And I also have identified key areas where the issues seem to be consistent. There's costly vet care. Post-COVID-19, vet care has skyrocketed. In this particular area, it's $300 to $400 to sterilize cats. Like I mentioned, poverty. The household average income in this area is $48,000, and more than 20% of my town is considered in poverty. So we have one nationally known shelter, like I said, one animal control, and a handful of rescuers and colony caregivers, but we need more. There's also no recognized foster program. Then again, like mentioned, there's a poor attitude toward pet ownership and a lack of knowledge, generally. A lot of folks here, like Kim stated, they look at these cats as vermin, and abuse and killing is just commonplace. There's also not a whole lot of TNR opportunities, and our city ordinances are just oh, out of control. They have a
Thank
number
you.
limit.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. You are all actually getting so much love in the chat, which I know you can't see, so we'll share it. And I hate to interrupt. It does sound like Angie is also on the call. We have about a little less than 10 minutes. As if Angie, you wanted to share about your lived experience, yourself, and what worked, what didn't, and what could have been done better. Thank you.
Hi. So sorry, Dawn, to cut in. I'm Angie. I grew up as a foster kid. I have been housing insecure basically my entire life. I've never really unpacked whenever I've moved someplace because I'm always concerned I'm going to have to move right back out. So I'm also lived with suicidal ideation my entire life. So I would say the suicidal ideation actually goes away when I have an animal because I do not want to leave them and abandon them. So therefore, I do, everything I do is for my animal. I do not have a human family. Well, recently, this last time that I was homeless in my van for 3 years, I did get with a group of individuals who are homeless and homeless advocates that I have found a family within. So I do have a chosen family, but not a blood family that I am close to. My dogs are everything to me. They are the reason that I get up every day. They're the reason that I go for walks. They're the reason that I, can and do get out of bed. So that being said, I don't want to go into a lot of the trauma. You've heard a lot of that already. I've been really thinking about what has worked, what hasn't, and what can be done better. And what has worked is the right to have an animal with me in residence per an ESA paperwork with my doctor. That can be done better because some agencies actually will not across the board. They will not write for ESAs because they are afraid of liability. They're afraid that they're going to be responsible if, like, my untrained dog bites the mailman or whatever. And since they wrote the letter saying that I was allowed to have it, then they fear that they're going to be liable. And that's not the case. So more education is needed around ESA orders to show everybody, including the ones who write, the ones who have them, and those that are seeking who's responsible, to know exactly what an ESA order is. And it's just so that I can have my dog with me in my residence. Veterinary bills and affordability is another big issue. We've had some vets here who actually did free vet care for ESAs for as long as they were able, but they had to stop because it wasn't sustainable for them. I truly believe that many of us with our bonded animal will put our dog or our animal first, but we may not have all the cash up front. So rather than, we're not looking for freebies. We're just looking for some accommodation, some assistance. I would rather be on a sliding scale, or a payment plan actually would work better. Anyone that needs to, because we really cannot afford upfront when we have an emergency like that, when we're living paycheck to paycheck or disability check to disability check, as many of us are. And the criminalization. I did find a dog for a friend of mine who was homeless and did get into housing. I gave him the animal, and unfortunately, because of his mental illness and stigma, the neighbors had abused the dog, and I had to take him away. I would have loved to see that dog flourish with him, but he had no support as far as professional services to be able to assist him in maintaining that dog. As a peer-to-peer, many of us help each other, but we really need the professionals backing us up. I couldn't do anything except to take that dog away so that he did not get charged for criminal abuse, and also for the dog's safety, because at that point the neighbors were sending their dogs out after his dog, and I had already put in $600 in veterinary care to take him to the emergency vet for a bite from another dog. So so that's what has worked, what hasn't worked, what can be done better. Yeah, I think the more education around trauma-informed care, which has already been talked about. I think that the payment solutions can be as easy as payment plans or sliding scale or both. Rather, I just had to put one of my beloved down, and my vet wanted $158 just to give him the shot, and then I was to take him home and take care of him from there. I ended up going to the pound and had him put down for 25, but I couldn't be in the room. So, I searched all kinds of vets. The second closest amount was 400, and that was just walking in the door with my dog to be euthanized. I mean, it's a sad enough time already, let alone being gouged and, people wanting extravagant amount of money just to give the dog some rest and some peace and to not be miserable. So there are funding agencies out there. Maddie's Fund is great. I've also had a couple of small grassroots area vouchers around. I've been put in touch with some vouchers in our area before. Those are great, but I think that if we had like some assistance nationally that these grassroots could draw from and or assist with, to be able to assist with funding. So I think that about wraps up most of what I wanted to say. I don't want to go on and on. So thank you for having me. Thank you for hearing all of our stories. Thank you for all the work that you're putting into trying to embrace the animal human bond, and knowing that many of us will put our animal first, because it's our animals who really are the reason that we're still here and we want to be here.
Thank you, Angie. We're so glad that you were able to join. And I'll just, with these last few minutes, I'd like to share some of the comments in the chat. So in response to what Kim shared, that was beautiful. To everyone, these stories are the reality for too many every day in every corner of our community. The speakers and sharing of their journeys are nothing but inspiring. Thank you for sharing and creating change by doing so. We need more speakers and stories like these. Heart emoji and dog paw emoji. You ladies are so brave, and thank you for sharing. You're all heroes for sure. And so I just wanted to again thank you for your bravery today, as shared in the chat as well. Many of us are deeply humbled from hearing from you all. And so to our audience, we really hope that today's discussion and ones over the past month help kickstart some ideas to implement during the Open Arms Challenge. And for your community members, remember that the Open Arms Challenge registration period begins today and through March 6th. Nadia, thank you for being our host today. And thank you all for joining us. We will, of course, continue this conversation and help answer any questions on the Maddie's Pet Forum. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment before we go?
Oh, yes. I think that's Suliani.
Yes, Juliana. So I'm a California attorney, and I attended a national conferences for psychologists for immigration purposes to train them on how to write the reports. So I'm thinking if we can organize a group and ask to have a class when we can attend to one of those national conferences for psychologists and train them on how to handle this situation and write the reports. In California, the psychologists write down support pet letter. And if in their experience, they think that the person needs a pet for emotional reasons, then the landlord has to accept that pet. I'm not sure if that's nationwide, but maybe we can start a movement. I have a psychologist friend. If he got me in for immigration purposes, maybe we can get in for this reason and educate all of them, if that's something you guys are interested in.
I think that's an awesome suggestion, and I think you have information in the chat if our panelists wanted to reach out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone, take care.